I know this doesn't look like much. Just dirt, you might say. But to me, and others like me, it's so much more. People say they live on the land, but my people lived with the land, like a sailor at sea. Here, man and land are one. Like the Bible says, we are all dust. My stepfather, Edmund Harris, gave me life with the land. In his early years, he was property owned by the Smothers family in Tennessee. First by the father, then the son. Edmund's first family consisted of his wife, Caroline, and their 3 children. They lived in Hayward County, Tennessee, until the mid-1850s. And with no regard for the family, his wife and children were sold to the Cook family in Kentucky. Edmund was moved to Crockett County, Tennessee, and sold from father to son. Edmund escaped from his mother's plantation in 1863 and came to us in Alamo, Tennessee. He married Joanna Joseph, and the 2 of them had a daughter, Mary. My brother Ashley and I were already adopted by Joanna Joseph. Edmund accepted us as family and treated us like his own sons. Black men were enlisted as Union soldiers at Camp Nelson, Kentucky. Edmund was determined to join, so he ran away to Kentucky, where he enlisted. After a year in the Army, he came home honorably discharged and with a new name. Edmund Harris was a free man. When the war ended, I was 8, Ashley was 10, and Mary was 5. The former owner sent me to school because he said I showed great potential. It was very rare for formerly enslaved people to receive any kind of education. I was grateful. What I learned helped me develop ideas I would later use when I had my own farm. In the meantime, my step-parents continued to work on the plantation after the war. They wanted to make the move north, but they felt they needed to wait. They thought we were too young for such a long trip. Soon, though, it became impossible to stay in Tennessee. You see, after the Civil War, the U.S. military remained in the South to maintain order. This was the beginning of the Reconstruction era. But after the military left, the Night Riders began. Everything changed. What we gained, we lost. Many people died. We lost the right to vote. There were no more decent schools, decent jobs, or decent pay. By the late 1870s, it was intolerable. Our parents decided it was time to leave, but our former owner tried to make us feel guilty for leaving his family. He made sure we'd be leaving without having any money. It took us at least 2 years to travel from Tennessee to Wisconsin, maybe more. We had to stop along the way to rest and find work. Winters really slowed us down too, so we had to wait until weather got warmer so we could travel. Unfortunately, we didn't all make it to Wisconsin together. Our stepmother, Joanna Joseph, died along the way. The journey was just too long and hard for her. We were very sad we had to leave her behind. What else could we do? We arrived in Cheyenne Valley around 1877. There were other black families who'd settled here earlier. We earned enough money so Edmund could buy the first 48 acres of his farm in Forest Township. This happened in 1879. With help from our neighbors, we were able to build our house and barn on the land. It was a great beginning. Edmund was a proud man as he walked on his land, but he didn't live very long afterwards. He died in 1881, after only 2 years on the farm. He had willed the farm to his only natural-born child, Mary, but she almost lost the farm because it was heavy in debt, and also because of Edmund's first family, You see, when Edmund's farm was put into probate, the children from his first marriage tried to lay claim to the farm and sent a representative from Kentucky to act on their behalf. This was the first we'd ever heard of these children. Thankfully, the courts ruled in Mary's favor, and she was able to keep the farm. I had paid the debt that was owed, which allowed the farm to stay in our family. At the time, Ashley, Mary, and I were young adults living on the farm together. We didn't have a reason to leave, yet, but that changed. Ashley was the first to leave the farm in 1882. That's when he got married to Rebecca Bass. They were also the first to leave the farm and move to La Crosse. Ashley became an apprentice in the Moss Barber Shop. I married Millie Revels the same year. We stayed on the farm with my sister Mary until she moved to Minneapolis and found work. Millie and I remained on the farm, which eventually grew to 250 acres. We had 6 children. Our last 2 were twins, but one of the twins, Millie, died shortly after birth in 1895. Her death was devastating to us. It almost destroyed our family. It had a profound effect on Millie. I loved my wife. Millie and I were married for better or worse until death parted us. But she went into severe melancholy after Millie's death. Even though Marvin, the other twin, survived, that wasn't enough to comfort Millie's grief over the loss of our daughter. We wanted to help her with the overwhelming grief she felt, but we didn't know how. So we thought it best to put her in a hospital. We brought her to the Vernon County home. It was a hospital and farm. We visited Millie often over the years. Unfortunately, the Millie we knew, with the glow in her eyes, never returned home.
Dad was a good husband to our mother during this time. With Mom remaining in the hospital, Dad was left to be a single father. We all learned to cook and bake, and of course, we needed to be able to handle the wood-burning cook stove without burning ourselves. If one of us was too short to stir the soup pot or stew, we stood on a chair next to the stove. The back of the chair protected us from the heated stove, and after a while the chair had scorch marks where the back touched the stove. It's a miracle that we were never seriously injured. Anyone who knows anything about farming knows children grow up fast. Farm children have to work like hired hands while they still in knee breeches. It's not that there isn't any playtime, it's just not a priority on the farm. I think because of the nature of the farm labor, Alga became very ingenious on the farm. He watched Dad as he built a large frame house to replace the log cabin constructed by Grandpa Edmund. Dad figured out what was necessary to bring running water into the house from a hillside spring. We were there first to have running water in our home and indoor plumbing. Can you imagine? Running water and indoor plumbing. What was he gonna think of next? A water heater? That would have been nice. These were the significant accomplishments before 1919. Dad was the kind of farmer who read all the farm books and magazines that you could find. He was the first to have a tractor in Cheyenne Valley. And he understood many of the latest trends in farming. Farmers and counter farms, agents came from miles around to talk with my father about farm news, seeds, germination, and breeding. Dad was a very well-regarded man to everyone because he was very well-read. I was proud of him. And as for my brother Alga, he built most of the round barns in southwestern Wisconsin. These barns allowed for more efficient use, of the farmer's time and energy. The silo was in the center of the barn and the cows faced the silo in the center. It made much more sense with having the silo outside the barn and having a straight row of cows and stanchions. Yes sir, my father and brother were like 2 peas in a pod when it came to farming. My father was a very religious man, and a learned one also. He stressed the importance of us getting an education, and after World War I, my brothers Herbert and Alga attended George R. Smith College, which was historically black college in Sedalia, Missouri. Herbert became an engineer in Rockland, Illinois, and Marvin eventually moved to California, and he started a very successful business there. Alga and I ran the farm with our father. We also constructed about 15 round barns in southwestern Wisconsin, and Alga was the contractor and developed the design. As children, my father had us read the Bible in the evening. He also said,
Read a little from the Bible every day. I want to live in a way that is acceptable to the Lord. It's my desire to be acceptable. The Bible is the only guide folks have. You, I, or anyone else.
With my father, religion was not just a cloak to be worn on Sunday mornings. It was a lifetime garment, reassuring in times of difficulty and comforting in times of happiness.
I was a Buffalo soldier in World War I. Our regiment borrowed the name from the Black Cavalry units formed during the Civil War. I'm proud of my service and the 183rd Infantry Brigade of 365th Regiment. My community and my family, they thank me for my service. But did my country? World War I started in 1914, but the United States didn't get involved until 1917. At the time, the U.S. military was segregated. We ate, slept, billeted, and took our ranks as separate orders. It was hard to know who the enemy was because the British and the American soldiers refused to fight alongside African Americans. But the French welcomed the Buffalo soldiers. The 183rd Infantry Brigade fought in the Moosargani battle. It was the costliest conflict in the American history. 1.7 million soldiers fought for 47 days until it finally ended on November 11, 1919, Armistice Day. Soldiers who returned home promised never to speak of the horrors of that war. These memories were hidden away like our uniforms, in closets.
I love this kitchen. This is my mom's kitchen. She loved this place and we loved seeing her here. When Herbert and I were in school, the morning was full of the smell of coffee, fresh biscuits, and a side pork frying in the pan. We'd hear Dad and the hired man clinking shot cans of milk as they came through the front door. Those sounds and smells were our alarm clock. Lunch at school was another biscuit with leftover meat and a pint jar of milk. We'd run home after school to the smell of fresh baked bread, or a cake, or cookies. Mom was a great baker. Before chores, we would each get a large slice of fresh bread slathered with churned butter, and off we went to feed chickens and calves. When we came in from chores, the kitchen was filled with the warmth of my mother, surrounded by the aroma of her supper. We loved this kitchen. But everything changed the summer of 1895, when Marvin and Millie were born. Suddenly, the kitchen was cold, empty. Dad greeted us in the morning, but there were no biscuits for breakfast. Marvin was fine, but the hushed tones in the kitchen told us that Millie wasn't doing so well. Auntie came to take care of Mama, Marvin, and Millie. Papa's face told us to be quiet. But Millie died a month after she was born. That was the beginning of Mom's downward spiral. That was the beginning of me losing my mother. The look of sorrow on her face stays with me. All of us had to grow up very quickly to help Dad with Marvin. I couldn't help but wonder how different things might have been if only my sister had lived. The winter of 1895 was cold. Our hearts were heavy. Then one day, the following spring, Father coaxed Mother out of her bedroom and downstairs. Morning sunlight came in the kitchen windows. There was promise in our small world. We hurried off to school full of hope, but hope only lasted for a little while. This went on for years. For a few weeks, days floated by like a top twirling and wobbling, but finally the top fell on its side and there's nothing we could do. Mom closed herself off again. Dad paced the kitchen. Mom's sisters came. Soft discussions were heard. Then in 1907, Dad gathered Mother up and they drove away in the truck. We love this kitchen. This is the place where our mother was strong and beautiful. This is where she could love us. This is where she'll always be remembered. She passed away in 1940 at the age of 74. But I will remember her in this kitchen, for she was truly our mom.
I was asked frequently to come to this one of the local schools and tell the kids about the round barns and how they were built. There were several integrated schools in the area. The one I happened to visit on this occasion was the Eastman School. This brought back many memories of my time in school here in the valley. I remember that I was a lot like the kid who the teacher always had to told to throw away his candy in the trash. See, life on the farm was pretty hard, and school seemed to be the only place that I could have some fun. Most of the times, though, I just got myself into trouble. I usually start my presentation by asking the kids how many of them had seen any of the round barns that my men and I built. And if I asked if any had been inside of them, I'd get fewer responses. There'd always be one, though. This time, the kid's name was Simon. He'd heard from his father and his uncle comparing their barns to our round barns. His dad liked the way the hay wagon could be pulled up into the haymow to be unloaded. That was very convenient. You didn't have to hoist the hay up on the side of the barn and draw it onto runners. And Simon, remember to tell your parents that the trees for the barn need to be dry 2 years before the barn is built. And does anyone know why? Because wood shrinks as it dries. If you build with new wood, the joints could separate and the beams could split. The sidings could develop openings between the boards. All the shrinking should be done before the barn is built. Here, let me show you how a round barn is constructed. See on the part of this drawing here? That looks like a drawbridge on a castle. This is what Simon was talking about. This bridge is unfinished, but it goes all the way down to the ground. And the hay wagon is pulled by the horse right up to the top, to the hayloft. The horse and wagon travels around the inside of the barn and comes back out the back when it's unloaded. What else do you notice about this drawing?
The silo is in the center of the barn.
Exactly. As farmers, we all know how important silos are to the animals in the winter. It's where their food is stored. So why do you think the silo in this drawing is in the center of the barn instead of the outside? In this drawing, you see the barn opening up like slices of an orange. And imagine, in each of these areas, a cow can enter and stand. Most cows like to go to the same stanchion every day. It's a good thing the cow's head is placed in the stanchions while you're being milked. Otherwise, they'd be walking around and you'd have to follow them with a pail. And that's not something I'd want to do.
Me neither.
Once the cows are all in their stanchions, They're all facing the silo. Feed is dropped from the silo or the hayloft into the center, and it's much easier to feed the cows in a circle. When it comes time for milking, there's more room between each cow because they're spread out. If they were all in a straight line, you'd have to paddle Betsy on her rump and tell her to move over. She'd move over, but sometimes the cow next to her might not like being crowded. And while milking, the tussle about who owns the space begins. Hopefully the pail of milk doesn't end up on the floor. It also works out nicely when the cows stay in the barn for the winter. That fact alone makes round barns better. They have more room for laying down, and they're not as likely to step on each other. Then, there'd always be that little funny guy that always asks about the circle on the marked drop.
What does the drop mean? I can't believe you said that.
Arnold, I'm sure you know exactly what that is.
What goes in the front of the cow comes out the back end. And what comes out the back lands in the gutter.
Thank you, Mr. Shivers. Class, wasn't he a great guest?
Thank you, Mr. Shivers!
Yes, sir, I enjoyed those visits. Teachers at the Eastman School, the Salem School, and Mount Tabor would have me talk to their students a lot. They all knew about farming, just not a lot about the round barns I constructed. My father, Thomas Shivers, was a very progressive farmer. I learned a lot from him and used what he taught me to learn more about the round barns I built in the community.
After retiring from farming, Thomas moved to Los Angeles to live with his son Marvin. Marvin had become the owner and printer of Shivers Quality Printing Company in Los Angeles. Thomas died there in 1978 at the age of 101. Marvin moved to Paris, California, where he passed away in 1978 at the age of 84. Cora lived most of her life in Minneapolis. She married twice and had one child named Gilbert. Mary, Thomas's sister, also lived in Minneapolis. Thomas's eldest son, Herbert, had been an engineer in the John T. Lafarge Tanning Company in Rockland, Illinois. When the company disbanded, he also moved to California with his wife, Iva Bass Shivers, and spent the rest of his life there. Edgar lived his entire life on the farm, built by his grandfather, Edmund Harris, and his father, Thomas Shivers. Edgar never married. He died suddenly in November of 1940 at the age of 49. Alga was the most progressive farmer in the valley. He was born in 1889 in Cheyenne Valley. At the age of 30, he made Vernon County the round barn capital of the world by designing and helping in the construction of at least 15 round barns in the area. He married his wife, Flora Revels Walden, in 1945. Alga died in 1978 and Flora in 1980. They are buried in the Forestburg Cemetery. Alga and Flora never had any children, but they took part in the upbringing of many children in the valley. There are many people in Cheyenne Valley that affectionately call them Grandma and Grandpa.